There we go. All right, so you all are at the Optometry Set Your Sights High presentation. We are very excited to have two admissions counselors with us today. They'll be introduced in a bit, so I won't ruin the surprise. But we're hoping that you're here because you're interested in optometry, and you might be early in your journey. You might be applying next cycle, and we hope that this presentation can get your answers or your questions answered. So yes, all right, a couple housekeeping things from me. I guess I should start with a quick introduction. My name is Abby Johnson. I work for Residential Life, but closely with the Career Center, and I get to...
Abby, you're muted.
Am I unmuted now? Okay.
You're good.
Did you hear my introduction?
Cut off midway.
Midway? Okay. I'm Abby. I work for Residential Life, and I get to work with our global health living learning community up on the hill. When we have students living with us, we often have this really fun dynamic community of people interested in health and healthcare. So I'm going to let you know a little bit about this week. So you are here as a part of Pre-Health Application Week. And so we have a number of events, and today's only Wednesday, so there's still many more events. If you're interested, if you're still at those beginning stages and you are interested in pursuing or exploring other health-related fields, we're going to have a handful of admissions counselors at these various dates, times, places, all on Zoom this week to get your questions answered. So if you have questions about it, if you'd like to RSVP, you can go to that link, that prehealth.ucla.edu/application week, and all of the RSVP links are there. This is all going to culminate with our health school fair, which is happening this Friday from 12 to 3. Really cool opportunity to register for a one-on-one slot so you can direct admissions counselor. There's going to be over 50 health professional schools represented, and more details about that and registration is again at that link, prehealth.ucla.edu/application week. So without further ado, I am going to introduce our moderators for today. Let's see, I think, are they? Yep. All right, everyone's here. So our moderators today are coming from the Pre-Optometry Society at UCLA, students at UCLA. So Alex and Esther, I'm going to pass it over to you. I'm going to mute myself and we'll see you all at the end.
All right. Hello, everybody. It's good to see everybody here. My name is Esther. I'm a third year at UCLA, and I'm studying biology and Spanish. Me and Alex are here today to hopefully provide more information on Pre-Optometry Society at UCLA, which is the club that we are part of. I am going to be this upcoming year's external vice president, and then Alex will be this upcoming year's president. So if you're interested in our club, which Alex will talk about a little bit later, we would be super excited to share more information with you. But we wanted to share a little bit today of why me and Alex are interested in this career of optometry. And optometry is something that we don't normally really hear when we are thinking about pre-med or pre-health, because it's such a cool niche of a pre-health field. And for me personally, optometry was something that I didn't really know until I got to experience it personally. So for me, a little bit about myself is that I grew up in a household where my father was actually diagnosed with glaucoma when I was 5 years old. And at that time, I didn't know what glaucoma was. I thought it meant guacamole. And so I was like, wow, it's something that you can eat with your chips. But as I got to know his eye condition a little bit more, I realized that this is a very serious eye condition that leads to blindness. And that's what happened to my father when he found out he was unable to get surgery for his glaucoma and eventually became legally blind. However, it would be kind of sad if the story just ended there. It would be like, oh, you're interested in optometry because your dad is blind. But not only that, my dad has surpassed all of these obstacles of his blindness. He has gone through blind school training and been in the Society for the Blind program, which has helped him adapt to his blindness. And I think that that's the most amazing thing about my dad is that he was able to adapt to his blindness, even though it was such a big physical barrier. So seeing my dad become more independent, start to apply to even graduate school now that he's in his 70s, and have that ambition and have that motivation really inspired me to want to help others who may be going through similar things of experiencing low vision and having to adapt to this new lifestyle. And now I can say that I'm super proud of my dad for adapting to his blindness. Although there are challenges in being blind, my dad has adapted super well with his low vision technology and all of his low vision equipment, whether that is the tactile grips or the dots that he puts on the microwave, or learning how to use a knife, or having his Zoom reader that helps him read books better. I think that all of these things are super cool and super interesting, but not every one of us has that personal experience. Some of us have to go outside and experience the field of optometry on our own. And I think that that is what Alex did to get involved in the field of optometry. So for Alex, like many of us interested in optometry, he sought out different volunteer, internship, and work experiences, such as volunteering at general optometrists, working at vision therapy clinics, and even working and shadowing private practice optometrists at that may be specialized in keratoconus or contact lenses or various different specialties. And for Alex, what was super exciting for him was the aspect of working with children for low vision. And he found his passion for working with children and working with for children. And I think that he hopes to pursue vision therapy in the future as an optometrist. So I would suggest that if you are interested in optometry, interested in learning more about optometry, definitely take the time to shadow a doctor, see if you really love the field, love the work environment, and yeah, just get your feet into the water and test it out. But I've done a lot of talking so far. So Alex will be introducing our wonderful club that we are both a part of. I can say that it has been definitely one of the best experiences I've had at UCLA so far, being part of this club. And so Alex will kind of go into what our club does and how you can get involved in our club.
Yeah, thank you so much, Esther. Yeah, thank you for pretty much, you kind of told my journey there. So that's kind of how I kind of came across optometry and how I'm interested. But now I'm going to kind of introduce our club a little bit. And so yes, along me and Esther, we're going to be representing the Pre-Optometry Society at UCLA. And so just a brief description, the Pre-Optometry Society is dedicated to helping UCLA undergraduates explore the field of optometry, while also, of course, learning the necessary steps to become an optometrist in the future. And so our meeting dates / times for spring quarter are as follows. It's every odd Tuesday from 6 to 7 p.m. via the Zoom link right there, the tiny URL. And so for this spring quarter, we still have meetings week 5 and week 7, but week 9 is actually going to be our end of year symposium, which you do have to RSVP for. But besides from that, just want to give you a little bit of description for next year's meetings. So in the fall, we actually do have optometry schools visit us. And so in the past, UC Berkeley and Pacific have visited us in the past. And so hopefully this upcoming fall, we will have them joining us again. And then going into winter and spring quarter, we go off our informational aspect of our club. And so we do meeting topics such as what is optometry, optometry specialties, optometry pathways, We also talk about, of course, the steps to become like an optometry student. We have OAT test taking tips, optometry interview prep, optometry application process prep, everything that you need to be an optometry student, be an optometrist in the future. We're going to be hopefully providing that to you guys. And so, of course, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to email us at uclapreopt@gmail.com, and we'll be happy to help. And yeah, I think that's it. I think I'm going to post a little interest link on the in the chat as well, just so if you're interested in any of our meetings or anything, you can just you will get the emails as well. But yeah, thank you, and I will pass it back to Esther.
Yes, so if you have any questions throughout this whole presentation, you can put them in the chat and me and Alex will be sure to answer them. I do see some familiar faces that I know, like my mentee, Zoe, but I also see some faces and some names that I'm not really recognizing. And so I would love to get to know you guys better. If you guys feel comfortable turning on your cameras, that would be super cool. I love to meet new people. But for today, I'm sure that people are really excited to meet our admissions officers from Pacific and from Berkeley. So we have our admissions officer from Berkeley, Kate. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Esther. So my name is Kate Guthrie. I am the Associate Director for Admissions and Student Affairs at UC Berkeley School of Optometry. I've been there for a while now. Probably one of my favorite clubs to visit is the UCLA Club. So I seriously encourage those of you who are not a part of that group to participate. They are a fantastic group to be involved with, and they do a lot of great things. And I actually got to poke my head in one of their meetings last night, so it's good to see some folks again. What I do at the school is I work with current students in our program, but I also run the admissions process for the optometry degree. So I know most of the answers, if not all the answers to the questions, hopefully. But feel free, if there's anything that comes up that you're interested specifically about Berkeley or just in optometry in general, definitely here to answer those. And I'll put my email in the chat as well. So if later, if anyone wants to follow up with things, they definitely can. And thanks for having me here today, folks.
Okay, and then we have our other awesome panelists today. We have Caitlin from Pacific University.
Hi, everyone. My name is Caitlin Biddles. I am the Assistant Director of Graduate and Professional Admissions at Pacific. I specifically work with our Doctor of Optometry program as well as our Master's and PhD in Vision Science programs. I am an East Coaster originally, grew up there, went to school on the East Coast, have been out in Portland for the last 3.5 years about. So again, similar to Kate, I'm really happy to answer questions about the general admissions process, the program. I work with applicants throughout the application process and then also once they're students. So thank you again for joining us and for having me. And I will also put my contact info in the chat so you have it.
All right, so now that we've met our panelists, we would love to hear a little bit more about all of the attendees. So we have a poll for you guys. I think it should pop up soon where you can fill out some of the questions. We would love to hear what year you are and where you are in your pre-optometry journey so we can better help you understand and understand maybe the process or any questions and maybe see if we can answer any questions that you might have. So let's take a couple of seconds filling out the poll. Okay, and now we have the results for the poll. So it looks like we have a couple of first years, but mostly second and third years, and then maybe a grad student, which is super awesome. And the answers to where we are in our pre-optometry journey. It seems like a couple of us are still exploring maybe other pre-health paths, learning about optometry, but still unsure. Well, you'll definitely learn more about optometry here. And then I'm set on optometry, but not applying this year. I think a couple of second years or first years might be in that. And then go optometry. I'm planning to apply this upcoming cycle. Woohoo. Okay, so we will definitely be able to answer and hopefully help all of you guys who are in different stages of exploring pre-optometry and learning more about optometry, but are also set on optometry. So let's get started on what we have planned for today, which is some questions. So the first question that we will be talking about is, who would be a strong candidate and what qualities are you looking for in terms of students that are applying to optometry school? What would you like to see in an applicant that really stands out in the whole application process when there's so many students applying and so many great things that they can be involved in? Kate or Caitlin can both answer at any time. This is free for all, so if you guys have anything to add, feel free.
Sure, yeah. So strong candidate, it's a challenging question to answer because we don't have necessarily a template student for Berkeley. We've got folks that have a lot of different backgrounds in our programs, different experiences, but I'd say just, for the undergraduate group and graduate group that are here, what we're looking for is somebody who can, in terms of academics, work with the coursework that we have and keep up with the rigor. But on the flip side, also somebody who has those people skills that are going to transition very well into clinic. Such a giant part of this career is interacting with humans. So when we're looking at candidates, we want people we want to see folks who have been involved, maybe volunteer experience, whether or not it's related to optometry, that's okay. We're good with either. Shadowing is definitely something we're looking for. We don't have a specific set amount of hours. Some schools do, but we like to see that you've had a chance to either shadow or work within a practice. We kind of keep those on sort of the same level of being able to either work or to shadow with an optometrist. Different settings of optometry or different modes of practice. So there's folks, maybe getting a chance to work in a private practice, folks who volunteer at a, community health clinic. Those are really great things for us to see, because we know then that you're starting to think about what pathway you could potentially take when going into this career and seeing what those different modes look like. But overall, it's really just having that sincere interest, both again in working with people and working with people with this, probably one of the most important senses that we have, which is vision. So I think that would be what Berkeley is looking for, somebody who's got that ability to handle the coursework, but again, really is going to be able to have that bedside manner and that patient interaction.
Yeah, Pacific is very similar. We don't have any minimum benchmarks in terms of your academics. Similar to Berkeley, we look at things, we kind of break it down into what we call the 3 pillars. So the first pillar is your academics. So that would be, your GPAs and your OET or your standardized test scores. The second one would be your passion and interest in optometry. Especially in your first semester, the course load is higher than possibly you might be used to in undergrad. So, having some interest in optometry and having some experience is really great, just so you know, and have a really solid foundation of why you want to be in the program and why you want to eventually be an optometrist. And then the third piece is that communication piece. So we see it in your written application through your writing and your essays, but then we see it when you interview with us, because we are not just admitting you to be a student, but also to be a practicing optometrist after you finish. So those are the ways that we kind of break down applications.
Yes, awesome. Both what Caitlin and Kate both said are really helpful in, I guess, preparing for our application as we kind of gather our materials, gain experience. I know for me, having that wide range of experience is really helpful, getting experience from different types of practices, whether those are private practices that do more holistic care, vision therapy, like Alex, doing maybe specialized care for scleral lenses, or just general practice. You see awesome things in different ones, and each practice is so different, and getting to experience and maybe shadow, intern, or work at those practices really gives great insight on what the field of optometry is like when you specialize maybe in different specialties, or follow like something that you might be interested in now. So if you think you're interested in maybe working with kids, I would highly suggest finding a clinic that maybe you can gain experience from that works with kids. So moving on to the second question, what does your admissions process and timeline look like? Who is involved in this admissions process? And are there any changes due to COVID? And those are a lot of questions, but definitely we would love to hear what changes there have been to COVID, especially with maybe prereqs requirements, and how maybe the cycle and application cycle looks a little bit different from previous years.
Yeah, I can start. Our admissions process, so we do our admissions on a rolling basis. So the application will open on July 1st. Our admissions deadline is usually around mid-February every year, so about February 15th. So you can apply anytime in between there for the following fall. So on July 1st, 2021, applications will open for fall 2022. It is rolling, so as soon as your application is complete, we send your application to the admissions committee for review. The admissions committee will usually let you know within 2 weeks if you have been invited to interview or not. We do interviews about twice per month from September to April. And then after you interview with us, you receive an admissions decision within 2 weeks. So depending on the time of year that you be pretty quick from the time when your application is complete to the time that you interview and could possibly hear about a decision. The way that we do our admissions, we do have a committee. There are faculty members and current students on the committee that are reading applications and that are interviewing applicants. Our interviews are closed file, which means the people who have read your online application are not the same people that will be interviewing you. So the people who are interviewing you don't know anything about you other than your name. And then any changes due to COVID. So yeah, we did interviews all online this year. We're hoping to have them back in person next year. So that was probably the most significant change. Prereqs, we are allowing online labs, which in the past we asked that labs were in person. There's a couple, for any courses that you might have taken pass-fail during the semesters or quarters affected by COVID, we are accepting pass-fail credits for prerequisites. We have never had a minimum number of shadowing hours, so we understand that applicants might not have those this year. We are suggesting if you can't get into shadow, informational interviews are really great. Just getting on a phone call with an OD and asking about, what their day-to-day looks like and the things they love and the challenges they see in the profession. So those are probably the biggest changes due to the pandemic, but we're hoping that next year we can have people back on campus again.
So Berkeley's is a lot of this is fairly similar. We are also on rolling admissions. We started that last year. So we have essentially like 5 rounds that an individual can submit their application within those 5 rounds, starting July 1st, and usually within about 2 weeks after an application deadline hits, you'll find out whether or not you are interviewed. If you receive an interview, after the interview, about 2 weeks later is when the admissions committee will do a full review of both the interview assessment and your application. And then you'll find out typically after that. So it's about a month and a half that you find out within that time frame whether or not you are accepted into the program. When it comes to who is involved, similarly, we have students and faculty who are involved. There are 2 separate groups that do admissions committee, and a separate group is the interview committee. For admissions committee, it is predominantly faculty, but we also have students that are on it as well. For interviewers, each person who's interviewed is interviewed by both a student and a faculty member. The admissions committee has full access to your entire file. The interviewers only have access to your experience and your statements of purpose. So they don't see any of your grades or any of your transcripts or any of your test scores or anything like that. So there's sort of I would say like partially open file for the interviewer, but the admissions committee member sees everything and is able to review everything to make their decision. Our application cycle will likely close either early December, late November. We're still finalizing our dates. We just had our first admissions committee meeting for the next cycle a few days ago. So we'll have those updated on our website soon, but just kind of getting you an idea that will be opening in July and closing probably at the end of the year for 2021. Any changes for COVID? Right now, I think we're going to continue to be doing virtual interviews, but we're hoping we can start doing more on campus, kind of small invites and admit days and visits for those who are accepted into our program. We weren't able to do that this year just because of what was going on with getting people on campus. We similarly do accept pass, no pass and labs that were online during the semesters that were affected by COVID. We also did make our standardized test optional last cycle. We have not confirmed whether or not we're going to continue that. So one of those that you know keep an eye out on our website. We'll make sure we have updates on that as well. But yeah, that is basically our admission cycle is beginning July, and we have basically a deadline every month to submit an app. And then usually by the time you've submitted your app or by your deadline, you get about a month and a half between when you find out if you're interviewed, get interviewed, and then find out whether or not you've been accepted.
All right, thank you for those answers. So we're going to move on to the next question, which is about kind of the applicant and kind of the statistics. So what are the components of a competitive application aside from GPA and test scores, with consideration for personal statements, letters of rec, etc.? So we talked a little bit about experience and maybe shadowing and volunteering, but are there any other components that may help an applicant stand out?
I think considering with letter of recommendation, making sure you're picking people who can provide a broad perspective of who you are, but also picking people who actually know you in some capacity. Having done admissions with this school now for the last 7 years, I've seen some pretty sad letters, and it's disappointing for the applicant. I feel for them because they've put all this effort into this application to have somebody who really didn't quite put the same effort into the letter. I think there's ways to mitigate that. You know, again, making sure you're selecting people that you've got some kind of a relationship with, making sure that you kind of explain the expectations of what that letter should look like. So that way they have kind of a template or an outline of what they want shared. In terms of letters, we like seeing an OD. Obviously, it's important so that we get an idea of whether or not, you know, someone in the field is seeing you as a future colleague, someone who's an instructor or pre-health advisor or someone like that who can talk a little bit about your academics, and then a supervisor in any kind of role, whether it be employment or volunteer, who can talk about your work ethic, because all those things are definitely going to come into play. So having good letters of rec definitely can help enhance an application. I think another thing too that I always encourage people to do is to make sure that you've really researched your schools. Definitely get a hold of their admissions offices. You know, there's folks like me and Caitlin who are there to help and answer questions, and also get you connected potentially with people that you know, students or faculty, if there's specific interests that you have. And I think the more you're able to describe in your application, especially school specific, you know, why is this the program you want to do? I think that can help someone stand out as well, especially for both the interviewer and the admissions committee reviewer. They feel like this person's done their research, and that gets them excited. They get very excited when people have done their research. So that would be my advice.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Definitely do your research. Definitely reach out to admissions counselors if you have questions. I know at Pacific we have a whole list of student ambassadors on our website as well, so you can reach out to current students to get the student perspective, which is often a lot of times more helpful than information that I can give you, because they are in the program. Some of them are first-year students who have, you know, been in your shoes the year before and have gone through the application process. So it's really helpful to get that student perspective. Similar letters of rec requirements, and definitely, you know, ask the right people. For Pacific, we require a letter of recommendation from an optometrist and a letter of recommendation from an instructor who's graded you in a college course. And then any others that you have on top of that, if you want additional people, then that's great. I would say one more thing. There is a section in OptomCast, which is the common application, that is like the experiences section. So you can put in your employment history, your extracurricular experiences, optometric experience, shadowing, you know, community, all of that sort of stuff. And I always tell applicants, please fill that out thoroughly. It is slightly tedious because you have to put everything in individually with like the dates that you did it. But it's really helpful for us just to get to know what other things you're interested in and what else you're doing outside of school. And sometimes applicants will leave that section pretty bare, but then through, you know, a letter of recommendation, we find out all of these awesome things that you did. And we're like, well, but why didn't they put it in their application? So, you know, definitely make sure you're filling that out thoroughly. If you have to take an extra day or two just to get that done, that would be a huge suggestion, just because we do really like to see, just to get to know you a bit more as a person other than, you know, your GPA and things like that.
Yes, definitely. Thank you. So let's move on to the next question, which is, what type of experiences do programs look for students to have on their applications? And I know you guys also touched on this, but are there any considerations for impacts due to COVID? I think normally students would have the opportunity to shadow more or work more. However, I think a couple of maybe some clinics now are restricting the amount of shadowing students. So given this, should students consider to take a gap year to gain more experience? Would it help? And what are like the benefits maybe from taking a gap year during this season of COVID?
Yeah, so we touched on this a bit. You know, shadowing for us isn't required. It is strongly recommended just so that you can get a better idea of what optometry is and if it's something that you want to do as a career. So we do look for some type of optometric experience. Obviously this year it's been really hard for applicants to go in and get shadowing hours. And we understand that. We're not going to penalize you for things that are totally out of your control. So again, for applicants this year who haven't had the opportunity to have much optometric experience, we have encouraged, like watching some YouTube videos or blogs or, doing some informational interviews just to get some more knowledge that way. And then other than that, in terms of like community involvement or other experiences that we're looking for, a lot of times applicants will ask like, what's the best thing I can do? What looks best for an admissions committee? And honestly, it's whatever you like to do. So don't, volunteer because you want it to look good on your application. Volunteer because you like whatever it is. So if you love animals and you want to walk dogs at your local dog shelter, that's great. You're doing something that you really enjoy. So everyone's experience is going to be very different, depending on what their, academic and personal and work commitments look like. And so we do try to evaluate applications holistically in that way. And then in terms of a gap year, it's really personal preference. So some students will tell you that like they did a gap year and it was the best thing ever and they couldn't imagine not doing a gap year because it gave them a year to, kind of take a break in between undergrad and optometry school. Some of them worked to save some money. One of our incoming students is currently in Taiwan teaching English for a year. So it's really whatever you think is best for you. Other students will not take a gap year and they like just going straight through. And again, I would say if you have questions on kind of pros, cons of gap year and what might be best for you, definitely get in touch with some current students. If you email me, I can help put you in touch with people who have and haven't taken those gap years to try to, get an idea of what might be best. But in terms of admissions, it doesn't make a difference to us.
Yeah, I will have to, agree with quite a bit of what Caitlin is saying. And the only thing I'll add for experience that you can look into is I know programs like Berkeley and also some of the other schools have like summer camps that they do. I think they're still going to be, ours is virtual this year, but others are going to be virtual too. And that's another great way if you're not able to do shadowing or, interning or things like that to show that interest, to be involved in one of those programs and to apply for them. Because they're a lot of fun too. You get to build a network. I know ours specifically, we have students do a project that they get to have sort of a competition on. And it's something that you can then show to people and talk to people about, because you had to kind of look into something and especially something that was of an interest to you. Considerations due to COVID, totally agree that similarly, we understand that just people had a lot of things that were lined up that ended up not being able to go through. So we definitely take into the fact that people had some challenges with getting shadowing and internships. And I think in your Optomcast, you can actually list the things that you had intended to do or that you had signed up to do and that were canceled because of COVID. And that just gives us an idea of what were your plans and that you did have interest that you were trying to get involved with. Because it's kind of like, when Caitlin was saying, fill out the experience section, it's kind of the same concept. Like, let us know what were your plans, so that way we have an idea of them too. When it's considering the gap year, I think that gap years are great if you're ready for a gap year. I think it is personal preference, as Caitlin was mentioning. because really there's some students who are just out the door ready to go after they graduate from their undergraduate program. There's some folks who need some more time, whether it be to save money, whether it be to gain a little bit more experience, or if they just want to take the student hat off for a little while. I recognize sometimes, you know, after doing 4 years of undergrad, you just want a little bit of a break before jumping into grad school. And similar with Berkeley, we don't see that as detrimental, and we don't see that as an issue. Just as long as you were involved in something during those 2 years, you don't have to necessarily have it be very optometry specific, but, you know, just wanting to see what did you do during those 2 years that have helped you grow and develop to be prepared now for the program.
Yeah, definitely. I've heard some great things about gap years and different preferences from different friends that choose to take a gap year or choose to go straight in. But yes, to move on to the last question that we have, to wrap things up, we would just like to hear briefly, what advice would you give to someone applying this upcoming cycle, or anything we haven't covered yet?
The only way you can guarantee not to get in is if you don't apply. I always encourage people who I think get intimidated with applying to programs to just do it, because you just don't know. There really is no template student, and I would suspect most of, I think Caitlin would probably agree, for programs, you know, we really are looking at the individual and seeing their fit with our program and then within the field. So definitely make sure that you're not selling yourself short. You know, apply to the places that you're interested in, and make sure that you know, again, do your research and you're checking in with what the programs are, understanding them, and all that good stuff. And my last plug will be for my OptoCamp program again. I know, but I definitely encourage you to look into those as well. They're just another great way to get yourself connected into the community, learn more about the programs that you're interested in, learn more about optometry, meet students that are in programs. And I think going off even beyond just OptoCamp, but just, you know, a lot of our programs have ambassadors who talk to students, you know, talk to them about what their programs are like. Do you like them? All that good stuff. And my last would be, you know, if you're a UCLA student and this is something you want to do, I really encourage you to join your pre-optometry club, because that is such a great starting place for building your network, figuring out if this is the right field for you, having an ability to connect with schools. And a lot of times pre-optometry clubs have connections within the local community with optometrists for shadowing experiences and internships. So that'd be my last thing is if you've got resources on your campus, which you definitely do here at UCLA, utilize them.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. If you have an opportunity to join the Pre-Optometry Club, they are really great. You know, as admissions counselors, we get to go in and meet with you and talk to you and talk about our programs, but then there are a lot of huge other benefits as well. I agree. Don't sell yourself short. And if you have questions, don't feel like any question is too big or small for, you know, an admissions counselor or for a student. That's why we are here. We want to help you. We know that the application process can at times get overwhelming. So, you know, we want to make that easier for you. So if you're questioning something, just ask. It's a lot faster to get an answer over email or, you know, in a 5-minute Zoom or phone call rather than kind of worrying about something for a week or two and things like that. So that would be my advice. Talk with the students and give yourself some time to fill out the online application. Try not to rush through it. It is a standard online application through OptomCAS, but it is a professional school application, so it is fairly lengthy. So just give yourself time so you're not, you know, stressing about deadlines and things like that. And then you can make sure to just proofread everything before you hit submit. Once you hit submit, you can't go back and edit a lot of things. So just make sure when, if you do end up applying, and we really hope you do, that you just have everything edited and maybe have a friend or someone look things over before you officially hit submit, so that you're confident with what you're submitting, because it is kind of the first impression that we're all getting is your online application.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much to our panelists for taking the time to answer these questions that we have prepared. So we have a couple minutes left for the program that we have today. And so we'll just open this time up for Q&A. And I see that we do have a couple of questions in our chat. Alex, would you like to facilitate?
Yeah, of course. So of course, Zoe has a question. Would you guys recommend applying earlier in the cycle? So I know Kate mentioned Berkeley being roll-in admissions and stuff like that. Also, are there any considerations in applying after the summer? And another continuing question, do you have any advice for the interview process, knowing that's, of course, a very nerve-wracking experience as well?
Yeah, I always think it's great to apply earlier rather than later, just because it is a rolling admissions process. So on day 0, we start with a full class where we can admit students into, and then as time goes on, there are less spaces available. So applying earlier is always, I think, going to help you. For Pacific, our applications open on July 1st, but we don't interview applicants until the beginning of September. So you don't need to have it in on like July 2nd. And throughout the summer and early fall, you're still putting yourself in a really good position. Second part was the advice for the interview process. Be yourself. We really want to get to know you. We want to see how you communicate. If you do get nervous for interviews, take advantage of any resources that UCLA might have in terms of if your career center does mock interview prep, or if the Pre-Optometry Club will do mock interview prep. There's a message the Career Center will review your personal statement and help you prepare for professional school interviews. So definitely take advantage of that. It's a really great resource that will just help you get a bit more comfortable talking about yourself, because I know for everyone that's not always easy. But for our interview process, we're not trying to trick you. We really just want to get to know you. So practice talking about yourself, and refresh some information on whatever school you're in back pocket. But really just enjoy the day, and remember, when you're at an interview, you are also interviewing the school that you're at, because you also want to see if it's a good fit for you, because you'll be spending a couple of years there. So, we are interviewing you as an applicant, but you're also interviewing the school to see if it would be a place that you want to be.
I agree with everything Caitlin said.
Awesome. Yeah. And then one more question from Jason. He asked, would there be different question sets / personal statement questions required for each optometry school?
In terms of your OptomCast application, yes, there will be school-specific questions. There are some questions that are part of every OptomCast app that everybody, all of us receive, but each school will create their own specific questions that they'll ask you to answer. And for interviews, it'll pretty much be the same. It'll be how the school wants to structure their interview.
Awesome. So yeah, if there's any more questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. We still have a couple minutes. But if not, I think, again, appreciate these admissions counselors coming out to joining us for this little Q&A session again. But yeah, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to talk with us, prospective optometry students who are still exploring the field or possibly, going into the application process already. But yeah, again, thank you. And so if there's no more questions, I think everyone is free to go. Again, thank you for joining us.
Say something.